Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Granger, and this is Curtain Call, a weekly conversation with powerful women in the arts. And we're presented by FabCollab and Heritage Canada. This week, we have a really amazing and wonderful guest. Her name is Tia Kushniruk. And she is a queer woman of Chinese Eastern European settler heritage from the Treaty 6 territory of Edmonton, Alberta. I think this is our first guest from Edmonton. And she's worked with, she's had the pleasure of performing works of Anthony Hamilton, Paul-Andre Fortier, Peggy Baker, Aria Evans, who we actually just had in a show with us on Saturday, Christopher House, Shay Kubler, Susie Burpee, Jasmine Fife, so many amazing names. And she's a very multi-talented woman. She's an illustrator, a curator, a moderator, an animator, a stand-up comedian, and a writer.
I've done a lot.
You can hear her voice there. And her research has been supported by the AFA and the CCA, the Canada Council for the Arts, since 2014. And more recently, she's the inaugural recipient of the Confluence Fellowship from Catalyst Theatre in Edmonton. Please welcome to Curtain Call, Tia.
Hello, thank you, Leah. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh.
We're so excited to have you here. It's so wonderful to have another dancer, to have a contemporary dancer.
Yeah.
I feel like we just had Aria in our show, in our the Fab Club show, Women in Song, Strange Darlings, just this past Saturday. And it's been really nice to be exposed to some contemporary dance, to get out of the folkloric world and see like something totally different. And
it's a very interesting like form of performance just in general, because it's contemporary. There's so much that it draws upon from just any facet that it latches onto, and so then it also becomes quite the remix of anything it touches, which is so fun.
Maybe you could like start, just because your work encompasses so many different forms of expression and different quote unquote mediums or formats. Do you think maybe you could describe like a particular piece that's like a little bit emblematic of your work, just to sort of give people a sense of like what it is and what it could be?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I guess the work I can talk about is the most recent work that I premiered with Mile Zero Dance here in Edmonton, and it was a solo called Monolith. And Monolith was initially created to be a live performance show, and because of COVID, we had to adapt it to film. And we decided to actually make a film of it, not a dance film. Like, we wrote a screenplay for it, we storyboarded it out, and I hired a friend of mine who's a comedian here, Rizwan Mohudin. And so I wanted to make sure that this solo was playing with not only entertainment and like theatrical elements that are like kind of mocking spaces and mocking audiences, but also really like putting myself as a dancer into that like sort of accountability space of being like, yeah, I'm also to be laughed at as well. And so Monolith was this really interesting examination of power and hierarchy. And it kind of felt like it was like me reflecting on the institution of dance that I had like went through, especially within like my college years, of like, what is it to be placed like below someone, taking those orders? Like, do you have any power? What happens when all of a sudden the tables are turned? And so Monolith became this really funny avant-garde, not really fitting into a dance film category, not really. We submitted it to a few film festivals and they were like, we don't know if this counts as comedy or drama or tragedy, but it...
Can you describe a little bit of like what it actually happens? Like, if someone were watching it, what would they see?
Yeah, okay, so there's a monitor that exists, so a television monitor, and it has this like white face on it. And this monitor orders this subject 71 around. And it gives these orders like, you aren't doing very good today. Like, you have to figure this out. Like, why aren't you? Your vigor levels are like 2% less than they were yesterday. Like, bring them up. And then, oh, I see you're injured. And then the subject decides to rebel against this monitor, and they happen to have a water bottle and they electrocute this monitor. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm free. But then it warps again, and the monitor is like, no, I don't need electricity to still control you. I still have hold of you even when I'm not around. And so it kind of goes from this like literal like play that exists all of a sudden into like a surreal turn, and there's like a torture scene, and then there's a scene in which she's like put into these like places of like extreme physical, like oh, you're gonna play don't you love basketball, like pulling this character into like these places of, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And in the end, the character like basically gets fucked by the monitor. There's a sex scene that exists in which they're having like fucking themselves, and it's this sort of emblematic thing of like, as I'm fucking, I'm also getting fucked. There is no way out of this. And the subject actually dies. They get so bored of it, they fall asleep and they die. And then it cuts immediately to the next day, and it's like, oh, time to start over. So it's like, oh, this is a cyclical thing. This is something that's never gonna stop. And so, but it's comedic. It's really funny. And I had a lot of my dancer friends came up to me and they were like, this is really shocking because it touched on a lot of things that I was feeling, but also at the same time it was funny. Like, why was it funny? And it's like, it's a thing that we all go through. It's like commenting on like the hierarchical like power structures that we have to live in, obviously, but also then just being like, well, next, okay, what's next? Let's try it again. Let's see what happens. So I guess it's
also like sometimes it's like a relief when like people use humor in these sorts of like to address sort of like very heavy issues, is when you can do it with kind of levity. And especially in dance, sometimes it's just like it takes itself so seriously so much of the time. And if you have like, if you yourself feel like a goofy person, it's like, how do you express that in dance? It's like, feels like there's not space for it sometimes.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree. And that's been such a problem for me. No offense to dance, love dance. But like for me, I'm such a like musical theater kid. Like I was, grew up doing tap, like grew up doing musical theater. I love urban dance, and my parents were ballroom dancers. So for me, dance in and of itself took place in such an interesting sort of like community space. And then also when performances happened, they just happened, and they were performative, and there's this sense of putting on performance. And especially in like my time training with like TDT and like all of these places, there was this deliberate elimination of performativity, or this sort of understanding that there was just opening ways of like, you can perform with this face, you can perform like this, you can perform like that. And I was like, well, you can, but also I am interested in like jazz hands. Like there is something that's really fun about being up in someone's face and then being able to control that, because that is a form of communication. If I'm not going to be there and grab you and pull you in, you aren't going to care about my story. And I mean, I've done a lot of like fringe, and so like when you're out there hand billing, it's like you got to sell it. Like, so there's all this like this the element of performance and performativity is really wound its way into my work. And so even though I'm absolutely like working in the medium of dance, I totally understand that sometimes, especially contemporary dance, really puts performance and this like they always put it as the last layer. They're always like, oh yeah, the last layer of like, oh, show day, performance day. And it's like, no, there's this understanding that performance is something that you have to cultivate and you have to practice. And performance can be you sitting in a corner and not doing anything, but then breaking out into like a joke or something to catch people. It's about that wow, that was inarticulate at times, but that's okay.
But I have a question. So it's just like, if performance is just something that comes, I'm not a contemporary dancer. It's like the last day. It's like, what is it then? Is it all about process and like exploration and creation?
We're getting into like Tia gripes about contemporary dance territory. Which is dangerous. How dare you? But I fear more often than not, yes, obviously it's about process. And process is so important. I absolutely agree, but also process is not entertaining. And I'm interested in entertainment, obviously. And especially when performance itself, or this idea of performance, is left to the last minute, or it's left to, oh, adrenaline will rush in and you'll figure it out. It damages the work, in my opinion. It doesn't allow for the sense of like what this work could be, as soon as, because audiences change things, and I'm sure you know that, like especially with like, as soon as you have another person step into the room to watch you, there's a feeling of, and the work becomes different. And even that is sometimes not addressed within contemporary dance because so much of it is incubated within. And I mean, I know I've heard of many different projects of like Xavier Leroy. He's this contemporary performer who was like a mathematician in like Europe, and he did like this long performance where it was called Open Studio, and essentially it was like they had money to do this too, but like it was like 2 months of like an open process where people were able, like audience was able to just come in and watch and whatever, and they didn't actually have a performance at the end because the performance was the process. And I'm like, yeah, that is one of the most interesting things about contemporary dance, but alas, what you have to see is the entertainment portion of it, and so much of that I find is left up to last minute, or it's just not talked about entirely because so much of contemporary dance is about, well, use your body to feel, use your body to sense what's happening, and that in and of itself is a type of language and a type of literacy that is so powerful within dancers. But then when it comes to articulating what you have to do and like write grants, it's like, well, I don't know, I just feel, right? So it's like, oh, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like, how much do you, like often I wonder, it's like, how important is it to you that the audience is like understanding your message?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or like who kind of is it for? Like, do you feel like when you're creating work, do you think about the audience, or are you thinking mostly about like the story you want to tell?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. It's that is something that I think about immediately, is who is this for? And also if I like it, because that's another thing. You have to like the work that you make, right? Like if you don't like your work, then what are you doing? But but right, like, but the very first thing I think of is who is this for? Especially because the work that I play with, as being the person that I am, of like just the things that I exist with, the labels that I sit with, when I step on a stage, people make assumptions or people see me differently. And even in like day-to-day life, like I went and voted and I was called sir like 3 times and I was fine with it, but I was also like, yeah, like this is the way that people see me. And it's like, okay, that's okay. But this is something that is absolutely relevant when you step on a stage. Like people are still seeing you and creating assumptions. So you have to automatically be like, who is this for? Is this for an audience that is going to be going and watching like a subscriber, like sort of like Canadian stage thing? Or is this for my friends? Or is this for, and now with the digital audience that exists now, it becomes this blanket of sort of like, it can be for anyone. And so, especially with creating work, and especially with now I'm finding dance is really accepting like more theater-esque ideas or like thematic ideas from that pull. When you're working with subject matter that can be sensitive and can be kind of like on that tipping point of, ooh, I might be pushing into that territory, then you actually have to really consider your audience. You have to bring in a dramaturg. You have to consider like, yeah, is it a Thursday night show or is it a Saturday night show? Like a stand-up audience is different from a dance audience, and we all know that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, even yeah, but also I'm the type of person that likes to like yell at an audience. Like that's my type. I'm a very aggressive performance. It's not good. Yeah, I love being able to heckle the audience, especially an audience that comes in and is expecting to not be put on a spot. I think that there's something so fun about it, and it might be coming from a place of like sort of like like oh, I'm gonna poke fun at you, but it is nice to be able to yeah, bring an audience in, have them seated and comfortable, and then take them on a place where they all of a sudden feel uncomfortable to be in the space that they're in, and then raise those questions of like, okay, well, what is happening here? Like, why are you seeing this? And then, okay, let's talk about it.
Is there like a particular show that you can think of where you did that?
Yeah, one of the first shows that I was in was with a company here called Toy Guns Dance, and it was a piece called Red Wine, French Toast, and the Best Sex You've Ever Had. And it was an hour and a 15-minute show exploring the life of Salvador Dali. And there was like homoerotic scenes within it. There was like a lot of clown-based work within it. Like I stripped almost completely nude on stage and was like walking around like this. And there's this one scene in which the cast walks out and they have a piece of cake and they slowly like walk out and they sit and what we're supposed to do is slowly eat this cake, and there's this Elvis song playing, and it's really great, and I had to deep throat this cake, so I had to like take it and like like suckle it down, and the audience was this like losing it. They thought it was so funny, but also it's like, right, this was a dance show. Like this was marketed as a dance show. And it's like to be able to bring a dance audience to that point where they feel comfortable to laugh, where they feel open being able to be like, oh, what's going on? I think that that is so special. And it's also so hard to do. But also it requires a lot of, yeah, like being able to connect, being able to see the audience and be like, I see you. Do you see me?
There's a lot of expectation, yeah, when you say like a dance audience, that they're going to see a certain thing. And like, I wonder, like, do you feel like you need to like actually do like dance in terms of like, do you know what I mean? Because I feel like so much work, and even, yeah, like so much that I see is like really blurs the lines, that like, would you like, you're identified by others like as a dancer, but would you like self-identify that way, or would you give yourself like some other label, just because so, yeah, like some of it is so theatrical and like, yeah, it's scripted, or like it's not, there's not so much else, so many elements of the movement. Yeah, like how do you deal with that expectation?
I honestly can't tell you. I can't begin to tell you, because it's such an interesting thing, because dance, and like dance and the culture of dance and the different communities that dance encompasses has existed in my life like since before I was born. Like my parents were dancers, they were ballroom dancers, and that's how they met. So for me, even when I try to remove the label of dance from myself, it feels like I'm actually removing like history from me, and also my parents' history from me. And so it's like, I can't remove this thing, but I can amplify it in other ways. And so truthfully, like, I guess the definition that I would give myself is like a dance performance artist, for sure. Because yeah, especially with the ways in which I've wanted to expand out and understand storytelling and performance, as well as just like dance in general, because dance in and of itself is storytelling too. And like to be able to, yeah, like for example, yesterday we brought in a fight choreographer in, because I'm currently working on some research with my collaborator Jenna Mazur from Vancouver, and it's a project called Deep Sea Research in Progress. And it's a work about violence, grief, beauty, and decay. And there's this fight scene that exists in which this white male essentially rages. And he has this moment where he just absolutely loses control. And it's this really drawn out, really ugly scene. And the whole set is like filled with these beautiful plastic curtains that exist, and they hide things from the audience, or they open. And this moment is where all the plastic curtains are down. So it's kind of like, oh, the rug's lifted, like this is what exists underneath. And so we were working with a fight choreographer yesterday, just like playing and practicing, and like the magic of stage combat is so fascinating. But it was like, right, this is movement, and is movement not dance? Especially the type of like, even the fight choreographer was like, yeah, you can't dance with this movement. You have to fight back against it. It's a different movement vocabulary. And it was like, yeah, this is amazing. So it's like, yeah, sort of.
But did you love it?
I loved it so much. I got to snap Jenna's neck, because it's all victim-led. It's victim-led violence is what the stage. Right. Yeah, so the woman that came in is Anna Pratch, and she's been building shows and stuff here with people. And so she was working on this like neck snapping thing. And it was like, yeah, it's all the victim doing it. It's not the person that's here is actually like supporting them and like holding them and making sure they don't hurt themselves, because they're doing all of it. Like whenever you see, like, for example, like a choke happening, someone choking them, the person that's choking is actually pulling away. And the person that's like getting choked is actually pulling them in. So it's like this, yeah. So it's like, it's all victim-led violence, which is fascinating when you think about it. And also, especially when we see as an audience, it's like, oh shit, like it's actually, oh, I don't know if swears are allowed. I swore. Okay. Sorry, Canadian heritage.
We already said fuck like 5 times, so good.
Okay, sweet. But it's like that sort of like, oh, it's just so cool. I just love it. But that's a different type of storytelling. And so it's like, yeah, I want to learn more about that, and like
And like, what are the sort of like stories that are driving you? Like, what are you driven to talk about in your work these days?
I'm really interested in stories that I haven't seen. And I mean, that's a really general thing to say, but honestly, stories with female-led characters, stories with people of color at the helm, stories that talk about like the queer experience, and also stories that talk about family. Because especially right now, family is such a, I don't know, for me, family is a really interesting pocket and bubble. And like I came from a family that was like my mom's Chinese, my dad's this like white guy, my brother is like mixed like I am, and I'm also mixed. And so and we were very like, it was just the four of us. And so there was a lot of interdynamics that were happening. And I have a small extended family as well. So for me, a lot of storytelling and a lot of drama happens between four people, and happens between like these parental figures, or between me and my brother, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm endlessly curious about familial bonds, as well as like bonds that are not necessarily shaped by family, because friends and like what these boundaries are and things like that, they're very blurry to me sometimes, because I grew up in such a tight-knit family, and I didn't really have, I had friends, but I don't have friends that I had like from back then. I don't have those friends now. Whereas I know a lot of people are like, oh, I still talk with my high school friends. I'm like, I don't really have anyone. So it's like, right, the stories I have to tell are about this. And I mean, that's another thing that I think is important too. It's like, why would I tell a story about the Black experience? I'm not Black, right? And I think
Of
that
course, you're telling your own stories. It makes total sense.
yeah. And it's another thing of like, when I see my friends also telling stories about their experience, it's so powerful. And I mean, like, that's what I want to continue to see. And I want to continue to see, like, I want to continue to see the higher up people also being able to see that too. Because I think that there's a lot less value in things that aren't placed in a black box theater, per se. Yeah, which I think we can all agree on, in that there's some things that are more valuable within just performance in general. But also, some of the most valuable performances I've seen have been at like a street fest, where you see a little kid just like freaking out because this metal Elvis man is like robotically moving, and this kid is just freaking out, and it's like, this is an amazing performance. This is awesome. This is something that is
absolutely so many tiny things, like Festival Street, like here, there, and yeah, it can be anywhere. But of course, we're living in a world where like things are valued in different ways. So, talking about that a little, I mean, as like somebody working in your field in Canada, it's like, how have you been able to make it work, sort of, and been able to pursue this sort of as your life? I mean, how have you made your way? Because I know it's challenging for everybody in the arts.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. And I say that like very like sort of like this, because I know a lot of people aren't as lucky. And by luck, I mean, like, I come from like a low income household. Like, my family really doesn't, like, I'm not going to spill numbers, but like, we aren't an upper middle class household. We're a lower income class household. And so the fact that I even chose to do the arts was selfish. And it was something that I had to fight for. And it was something that I had to actually like do secretly. And so when I first started training at the School of TDT, I paid for it out of my own pocket. I like was living with 4 other people in a 2-bedroom. It was not a nice quality of life that I think a lot of people would look back on and be like, oh, yikes. And like, for me, it was like, yeah, like, it's fine having $333 in my bank account at the end of the whole year, because it's like, now I'm going to go back home to Edmonton and work at Cactus Club and make money. And it's like, yeah, like, I wasn't able to afford to go and do dance summer intensives like a lot of other people were. And so even the fact that I'm able to make work right now, a lot of that has to do with luck, I think. And a lot of that has to do with I was able to like just continue to be curious about what I was curious about. Because there was a lot of times where I was like, I'm tired. like I'm sure we've all felt, I'm tired, like that. Ugh, okay, like how much more do I have to claw at this thing? And then something tiny. Yeah, wait.
Do you feel like you had to did you have to make any decisions in terms of like what sort of work you were going to create, or like creative decisions based on sort of what might be more like palatable?
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because I have been making work since 2017. However, I didn't actually get like a break in terms of people wanting to present my work until COVID happened. And that's mainly because I live online. Like, I am an online human and I live primarily on Facebook. Unlike a lot of dancers that I know that exist on Instagram, I don't really exist there because it doesn't make sense to me. But Facebook, I live on. And because of that, when everyone came online, all of a sudden they were seeing, oh, Tia's dancing. Oh, Tia's still making work. Oh, and that's how I was able to actually get some like opportunities presented to me. But before that, like I'd applied for like Fall for Dance North and like other small emerging projects and like things like that, and just never, like no one threw me a bone. And it was also because it was just like, yeah, like if you don't have anything to show, then like why, like, because also all of the stuff that I was doing, because I was working with I'm still working with this company, but Shea Kubler in Vancouver, we tour so much, so I actually don't have time to settle down and actually sit and be with myself and be like, right, what do I want to make? And COVID actually allowed me to actually sit and be like, yeah, I remember I did like a few animated films in high school. I'm gonna go back and do some animation now. I love anime. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna be the Korean weeaboo that I've always dreamt of being. I'll just live out that fantasy.
So you're the productive person during COVID.
Yeah, I was. COVID was great. I loved COVID.
You're making the rest of us look bad.
Well, I'm not as productive though. But at the beginning of COVID,
well, I was looking at your website, and it just seems like every project, there's like a grid of all of these projects, and they're all like within the last couple of years. So yeah, and as you mentioned to me previously, is like now is the phase where you want to present, I'm guessing, to perform those live.
Yeah, like even for example, Monolith, the solo that I was talking about, there is a live version of it. There is a solo that exists. However, it never got the light of day, so it only exists as this film. And yet I'm like, there is a solo. I just have to figure out who's willing to present it. But also because there's like so much text and it's like a full length work, I'm kind of like, maybe Fringe is the best thing to do first for this, or like self-presenting, because I'm like, I don't think I would be really surprised if like a dance presenter would look at this and be like, yep, that's enough dance for me to actually quantify it as being dance, because it's been fun to get turned away.
Yeah, I guess it can be really hard when you're sort of like in between these like defined categories. I know that Canada Council, like when they revamped their whole granting process, like the idea was that you didn't have to fit in those things, but then like behind the curtain, everything's still divided. It seems like the what do they call it, the panels or whatever are still like, it's still like music, dance, like etc.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it must be. It's still tricky, I imagine.
Yeah, it's tricky, but also I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. I think I've also given up the idea of like wanting to present my work on like large stages, because there's absolutely that dream, you're in school and you're just like, oh, it'd be so cool to like have my work up on a big stage. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh God, that's so much work. I'm like, ooh, maybe not. And I really enjoy being able to perform for an audience of like 40 people. That in and of itself is so much more intimate, and also it allows for more conversation afterwards and actual thought, versus performing for an audience of 2,000, because that's like, well then what are you actually showing besides just moving images at this point? And I mean, obviously the medium itself, this is something I've learned over the pandemic, but the medium is the message for sure. And because there's been this like loss of live shows, when people do get to see live shows again, we can't articulate why we want it, but we know we want it. There's something that's so powerful about being in an audience and seeing someone do something and just give it their all and just go for it in a way that other mediums like music or film, they're amazing and they're timeless, but live performance is temporal. And that's what's really powerful about it. No time you ever see the show will ever be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Is there like a particular performance where you've really felt like you connected with an audience, like where that really stands out?
Oh man.
That's might be kind of I'm putting you on the spot.
I haven't had a chance to perform my work in front of a live audience. I've done stand up in front of a live audience, and that was fun and hard. But it was also like, yeah, this is what it is.
That's so intense. Stand up. That to me seems like the ultimate sort of like exposure. Is this?
It's different. It's different for sure, but it's also exciting. It's going up there and failing. Practicing failing is essentially what it is, which is another thing that dance doesn't like to do, which is fail. Dance hates not being anything but perfect. Like when you see a ballet dancer fail, they're like, or ballet dancers don't want to fail. That's the point of ballet. Whereas I think, yeah, it's perfect. Whereas it's like one of the greatest things about live performance is that it has the possibility for failure. And like, that's something that I just love so much. And that's something that contemporary dance is so fun to play with as well, because you get to fail and you get to you get to realize that failure is actually something that's fun, and you get to continue building into it. Yeah. But I guess, I don't know. Back to your question, I actually haven't actually performed my work in front of enough live audiences.
Yeah, I guess you've worked performing a lot of the work of others, and we're gonna talk to Peggy Baker next week. So, and I know you worked with her. So, is there anything you want to tell us about your experience working with her? Like, is there anything what that was like what it was like? She's such an icon in Canada and in the world. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Yeah. She's a fan of yours, so.
Oh my gosh, Peggy Baker is I can honestly say one of the most liberating choreographers to work for and to work with.
Why?
She's someone that actually thinks about what she's doing. And I mean, everyone thinks about what they're doing, but she thinks about why you are doing the thing that you are doing and why it's you. And she cares a lot about the person, and she cares a lot about her work as well. Every work that she makes is coming from a place of deep examination and like intense sort of like settling into like the bottom of her soul. She's love her to bits. She's a heavy person. That's not a bad thing, but she carries a lot with her. She's been through so much. And so when you're working with her, she lifts those things up and she's like, I'm going to talk about this with you. And she's not afraid to learn. And I think that that's something that's also really important, is when you're working with someone and then being able to take a step back and be like, tell me what you think. Because that's not something that happens a lot. Yeah. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to be able to work with her and to be able to also, say that and to be proud of it. Because I think a lot of people, like, to be able to work with Peggy Baker, it's like a source of pride for me, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh, Peggy Baker, I work with Peggy Baker. It's very much like one of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe so what are you working on right now? Like what's you talked a little bit at the beginning about your current projects, but what are you what's exciting for you right now in your future?
Well, I'm actually heading back to Vancouver to work with Shay on a show called Momentum of Isolation, or MOI. And it's really fun. It's a really interesting, he plays a lot with dance theater as well. And his work is also extremely physical vigor all over the place, because he has a background in martial arts and house dance, which is so fun to play with. But the work itself is extremely physically you're in there. And I get to play this really interesting celebrity character that exists within this show. And they kind of have an actual meltdown within the space. And it's this really wonderful, you have all this power, but you're still isolated, right? Especially within So I get like a Britney mic. Like it's lots of fun. It's a fun time. So that's happening, and it's gonna be actually it's being performed at the Norman Rothstein Theater as part of Chutzpah Festival, and it's gonna be live streamed on November 14th. So
oh wow, that's so soon.
Yeah, I know. It's happening. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So people can like find that. So people can, I guess, can people buy tickets to the live stream, or is it?
Yeah, you can buy tickets to the live stream. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's like a permanent link or not, but you can buy tickets to the live stream.
Are you? Yeah. I'm like, are you into? I mean, talking about how your life has been online. It's like now everyone's life is online. Like, are you into all this? Like everything being live streamed and like, what are your thoughts? Or are you kind of like that's my jam? What do y'all do here?
That's what, get off my turf. That's a really interesting, I like it. I really like it because dance itself is so quick, right? Theater shows get maybe 2 weeks of a run and they get like, at least 5 nights a week per se, versus dance sometimes at its most gets 3 nights, right? And it's like to be able to have that additional digital accessibility, because it's all about accessibility. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely do it. And if that means like writing into your grant, like payment for a director who's going to direct that live stream, then I say like go for it, because it's just continuing to reach places that you wouldn't have expected, and allowing people to get that impetus to come in and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it seems like I've just read like in different places, like a lot of people are like, oh, like people don't want to see that, like they want to see live, but it's been our experience that like a lot of people watch them when you put them out there. Like there is an appetite for it. It's like people are still, like both options are starting to be available now, but like it is wonderful for the reasons you said, that like that option is there and that you can see this work, particularly with dance. Yeah, that like it will live there. In perpetuity sometimes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's coming up, or is that your main thing that you're focusing on right now?
That's my main thing. Besides,
that's a big thing.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. It's a performance. Why not? It's a big thing. But I mean, obviously, continuing to apply for grants. I'm building more works as they come along, and like piddling and all of that stuff. But mainly just like sitting with what things have to come next and how they kind of come up, because especially with COVID, things change so quickly, and sometimes I'm like, crap, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. So yeah.
So as I mentioned to you earlier, so we're gonna speak with Peggy next week, and we would love it if we could share like a few questions that you might have for her.
Yes. I have 3.
What would you ask her? Share us your questions and we'll share them with her next week. And because it's great also to have these questions from someone that actually knows her.
Okay, great. Okay. The first question I have is, what is your favorite dinosaur? Because she's from Alberta. So if she doesn't have a favorite dinosaur, then and it better be Edmontonosaurus, which is a plant-eating marsh animal. Anyways, okay. And then the next question I have is there somewhere that you would want to travel to right now? Like time and place is like relative. So if she wanted to like travel to, I don't know, the Grecian Roman era, that would be fun. Or like go to like, I don't know, like Wild Wild West. I'd be curious about where she would want to go.
Where would you want to go?
Okay. Okay, I would absolutely want to go to like pre-Mao China. I would just want to see it. I just would want to see it. Like before Mao Zedong came in, I just want to see it. I think it'd be fun.
It would be wild. Have you been to China?
Yes, I have. I have been there. Every 2 years I go for about a few weeks to go visit my family. Yeah.
Yeah, it already is like such a different world, and then
yeah, and I mean, we could. China's a different tangent entirely, but but I absolutely would love to.
We won't go there.
Not right now. That's another time. And then the last question I have for Peggy is, if you could revisit one memory from your childhood, what would it be?
These are beautiful questions. They're very provocative. I'm sure we're going to have a conversation now. Thanks Thanks to you.
Yeah, the dinosaur one is the toughest one for sure. It's like sometimes people are like, I don't even know what dinosaur. Like, what is a dinosaur?
Well, I've been to the Badlands a few times. I don't know what my favorite would be though. That one with like the head that runs into stuff.
Oh yeah, with like the actual like bump on the head, like that
It's
one.
like
The
head
round
is like it's like it just like runs at things like skull forward.
Nice. Yes.
And I guess we want to like be able to share just like, because you've like you even though you're like sort of emerging as a choreographer and that kind of thing, you have like so much experience and you've like been a dancer and you have wisdom to share. So I don't know if you were speaking to somebody like, you know, in their teens or like that was just sort of emerging and had these sort of dreams of making work that maybe doesn't necessarily like fit tidily into categories or is like not afraid to be silly or whatever, somebody that might like look up to you and admire you, like what kind of like what would you tell somebody like that about like what is some advice that maybe like you wish you'd had like back then, like something you wish you'd known then that you know now?
I would say to younger me, I would say to just keep following your curiosity. Like don't worry about don't obviously worry about what other people say and like what people are trying to give you and advice to you, but also remember that at the end of the day, you're born by yourself and you die by yourself. So the way in which you experience the world is up to you. And so to always just follow the shiny thing that you see. It's kind of the thing. Like if you see a shiny thing, go and follow it. If you feel excited about something, go and do it. If you're a little scared, give it a try. It's gonna be okay. Like just go and take a dive in the deep end. Because the worst thing that can happen is the lifeguard throws you something and pulls you out. You won't die, I promise you. You've done like swimming lessons, like you can tread water. Like we all know how to tread water. This is me talking to someone who knows how to tread water. A lifeguard will come and help you. Someone will come and help you. Because yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like take those risks. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah, why not? Go for it. And absolutely do things that make you curious and excited. And there's going to be days in which nothing happens. So go for a walk and like, I don't know, try tap dancing. That's fun.
So fun. I love tap dancing.
Tap dance is the best.
It's so silly and fun. Like we were talking about before with dance. It's like the one where you're like, It's very enjoyable. I'm like more of that. More of that energy. Anyways, yeah, that's like wonderful. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's been so wonderful to have you. If people want to find your work, where can they find you?
They can find me on YouTube. I love YouTube. I post a lot of stuff on there. And if you just type in Tia Kushniruk, I'll be the first YouTube channel that pops up. And you can also find me on Facebook and my website, which is TiaKushnir.uk, because I have a UK domain, which is so fun. I was like, why not get the UK domain? Yeah, and you'll be able to find all the work that I've been working on, that I'm going to be working on, as well as all my collaborator links. And so, because I just love collaborating with people. It's one of the funnest things about what I get to do is work with others. And
yeah, it looks like you have tons of collaborators on them. Yeah. I recommend the one, I can't remember what it's called right now, the one that looks like a video game.
Yeah, oh, the
bunker.
Maybe.
I like that one.
That's good.
Well,
nice.
It was like you really captured that feeling.
Oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. That was my brother holding the camera.
Oh, really?
And then, yeah, that's my brother. And then I had my mom and dad like running around and changing props in the background and like changing sound and like running around and following and doing this. And it was absolutely inspired by this video game called Dishonored. And there's this really fun NPC dialogue. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And I just had to expand on it. So I was like, okay, cool. We're taking that and we're running with it because it was just so funny. So yeah,
it was very cool. And yeah, so that's on your website along with many other really fascinating pieces of work. Um,
Thank you.
and everybody can, so we're going to throw up all of those links also on our website.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being with us here today. It's been really wonderful to speak with you, and I hope to see some of your work online, but also someday live and in person, maybe in Toronto or in Vancouver.
Yeah, I hope to see some of your work too. That would be so fun. It's so nice meeting people and then brainstorming and being like, how do I get to work or see these people more? And so, yeah, thank you so
100%.
much for having me on the show.
Our pleasure. And also, I want to mention before we go that Fab Club had a performance actually with one of the people that you've worked with before. We had a show called Women in Song, Strange Darlings, where we paired different singers with dancers from sort of different practices or different cultural backgrounds, so sort of like mismatched.
Nice.
And then they all performed through one evening with a band, a world music backing band, or a world music band that was backing the singers in this case, called Ventanas. That's really an incredible team of musicians. We had all these dancers. Aria was one of them, and it was at the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto last Saturday. But the live stream exists, so we encourage people to check it out on YouTube. It's at Fab Collab Live. Yeah, and it's also on Facebook, again, at Fab Collab Live. So we encourage everyone to take a peek at that because it's up there. It's free for anybody. Go check it out. And next week we will have the one, the only, the wonderful Peggy Baker here.
Pegasus.
And we'll be asking her your questions. So get into that.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Yay!
And thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to speak with you.
No, thank you so much for asking me these questions on a lovely fall day.
Yeah. Enjoy the weather.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye, Leah.
Bye.
Bye.